everyone! Today we're learning a technique called completing the square. This is a technique that we'll eventually use in order to solve quadratic equations. However, it's a little complicated, so we're starting out with just what is the technique. Completing the square uses perfect square trinomials. A perfect square trinomial is an expression with three terms that can be factored into parentheses squared. For example, x squared plus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square trinomial. Here's why. If we actually factor this, we have x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay? Factoring means I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6. Those numbers are 3 and 3. So this becomes x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. As I factor this, I group these two together and I group these two together. These share an x. So this is x, parentheses, x plus 3. Because x times x is x squared and x times 3 is 3x. These two share a 3. And inside the parentheses, we also have x plus 3. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 3 is 9. When I write this in factored form, first I put the thing they share. They share x plus 3. Then I put the outside numbers, which is again x plus 3, since I have an x on the outside here and a 3 on the outside here. Since these are exactly the same, I can rewrite this as x plus 3 squared. So that's why this is considered a perfect square trinomial, because when you factor it, you get something squared. There are some things we should notice about this because they'll be true of any perfect square trinomial. First, if you look, in our original problem, we have a, b, and c. A is the coefficient of x squared, so in this case, a is 1. B is the coefficient of x, so b in this case is 6. And c is our third term, which is our constant, so c is 9. There's a relationship between b and c and the number that winds up being here, and that relationship will be true in any perfect square trinomial. The relationship is this number is always half of whatever b was. So b was 6, this number is 3. Or if this number is 3, this number is always 6. The other thing is that this number c is always whatever this number is squared. So 3 times 3 is 9. Since this number is 3, this number is 9. You could also say that this is the square root of this. So just to summarize that, in perfect square trinomials, the middle coefficient b is always the double the constant in the parentheses. In the trinomial, the third term c is always the constant in the parentheses squared. So basically, this is our constant in our parentheses. If you double it, you wind up with b. If you square it, you wind up with c. Okay, we're using that fact in order to complete the square. So if we look, completing the square involves finding a third term, c, that completes the square that turns your expression into a perfect square trinomial. And to do that, you follow two steps. The first step, you find half of b. Then the second step, you square that answer. Basically, in a perfect square trinomial, c is the quantity b divided by 2 squared. Here's what I mean by that. You look at this number, this is b. So here b is 8. You find half of that. So half of 8 is 4. So that means in parentheses, this would wind up being x plus 4. It's plus because this was plus. Okay? Squared. So if this was a perfect square trinomial, it would be x plus 4 squared. Okay? If I actually multiply that out, x plus 4 times x plus 4. I actually do my multiplication, my distribution. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 4 is 16. So that'd be x squared plus 8x plus 16. This is a perfect square trinomial. It came from something squared. This is the only perfect square trinomial that will have 8x in the middle. So since 8x is in the middle here, my third number, c, must be 16. So in this problem, c is 16. Now if I wanted to, instead of doing all this multiplication, I just could have said, well, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so this number is going to be 4. This is always going to be this number squared. 4 squared is 16, so c must be 16. Let's look at this again. So in this second example, I have x squared minus 11x plus c, and I'm looking for what number could c be that would make this a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to divide this in two. b is negative 11, so half of that is negative 5.5. So that means inside here, negative 5.5 is going to be my number. When you're trying to turn something into a perfect square, you always do half of b. So to find out what c is, this is x minus 5.5 times x minus 5.5. If I multiply that out, x times x is x squared. X times negative 5.5 is negative 5.5x. Negative 5.5 times x is again negative 5.5x. And then I do negative 5.5 times negative 5.5, which is positive 30.25. Okay, if you put your like terms together here, this becomes x squared minus 11x plus 30.25. This is a perfect square trinomial because it came from something squared. It is the only perfect square trinomial that will have negative 11x as your b. So that means this missing c must be 30.25. So in this problem, c equals 30.25. This is the first step of completing the square, figuring out what must c be. Tomorrow and the next day, we're going to talk about using this technique to actually solve quadratic equations. But for tonight, you're just looking for what is c. All right, please email me if you have any questions. Have a great day.